People often describe their wedding day as a flawless moment bathed in sunlight, filled with laughter and love. I had always imagined something similar. Waking up to my mother gently fixing my hair, my father joking about how grown up I looked, and my younger brother Adam lightening the mood with his humor. But when the morning of my wedding arrived, it wasn't at all like I had envisioned. I woke up in a house that felt emptier than ever. The day began early, as all big days do, with sunlight streaming through the lace curtains in my childhood bedroom in Charleston, South Carolina. The smell of gardenias and roses, my mother's favorites, filled the air from the flower arrangements scattered throughout the house. For a moment, I lay in bed with my eyes shut, imagining how the day would unfold, the hustle and bustle, my family rushing around getting ready. It was supposed to be filled with excitement and chatter. But as I listened, all I could hear was silence. Unsettling, unnerving silence. I slipped into my robe and made my way down the hallway, expecting to hear my parents in the kitchen, perhaps even Adam sneaking a cookie or two from the breakfast spread. But there was nothing. No clinking of dishes, no murmurs of conversation, and no radio playing like my dad usually kept on in the mornings. When I entered the kitchen, everything was spotless, far too tidy for a wedding day. There was just one thing on the table. A white envelope with my name written on it in my mother's neat, familiar handwriting. My stomach dropped. I picked up the envelope, feeling the cold marble of the countertop against my skin. For a moment, I hoped this was part of some wedding tradition. A heartfelt note from my mother. Some words of wisdom as I embarked on my new life. But as I opened it, I saw it wasn't that at all. The letter was short, almost cruel. Let's see how you face the guests when we won't be appearing at your wedding. That was it. No love, no advice, not even a signature. My hands shook as I read the words over and over, hoping I had misunderstood, but the truth was undeniable. My parents, Linda, Robert, and even Adam, were gone. They had left on my wedding day. I couldn't understand it. The hurtful emptiness of it stung more than the shock. Who could do something like that? I searched the house, hoping for some sign of a joke. Maybe they were hiding, waiting to surprise me. But the house remained cold and silent. I sat down at the kitchen table, the letter still in my hands, the weight of their absence settling in. I thought of all the times I had imagined this day, never imagining I would have to face it without my family. Looking back, maybe I should have known. My parents had never liked William, my fiancé. They always thought his family was too wealthy, too distant from the life they had envisioned for me. But I never imagined they would go this far, not show up at all, and leave me to deal with it alone. The hours that followed blurred together. I walked through the rooms of the house, checking my phone, hoping for a message from them. But there was nothing. Just the stark reminder of their absence. The living room, usually filled with warmth and noise, felt hollow. My mother's needlepoint pillows were perfectly arranged on the couch, and the family photos stood in their usual spots. Everywhere I looked, I was reminded of the family I once had. As the day wore on, friends and family began to arrive, but nothing could fill the void. My best friend, Grace, was the first to notice that something was wrong. She found me sitting on the stairs, holding the letter, staring blankly. Without asking anything, she sat beside me, offering silent support. "You're stronger than you think," she said, squeezing my hand. "You don't need anyone's permission to be happy." Her words should have comforted me, but it was hard to focus on them. Every knock at the door, every voice in the hallway reminded me of who wasn't there. I kept expecting to see my father's familiar figure, my mother adjusting her hat, or Adam sneaking a wink in my direction. But they weren't coming. Despite the ache in my chest, I forced myself to keep going. Grace helped me into my dress, her hands steady as she worked on the buttons while I fought back tears. She tried to lighten the mood, making jokes about the weather, anything to distract me. "You're marrying into a millionaire family," she teased, fluffing my veil. "If your parents could see this, they'd regret everything." I tried to believe her, tried to convince myself it was true. Maybe they would regret their actions, but deep down I knew nothing would bring them back. As I stood at the top of the stairs in my wedding gown, looking down at the gathering below, I realized something. For the first time, I was facing the world on my own. No parents to guide me, no brother to crack jokes. It was just me. As I made my way down the aisle, a strange sense of peace washed over me. Maybe it was the sunlight, or the scent of roses in the air, but I realized that I could survive this. Despite everything, I would move forward. Despite my family choosing Paris over my wedding, I made the decision to be happy. In hindsight, that letter hurt, but it also freed me. It marked a shift, one of those tough moments that ultimately drive personal growth. When I took William's hand, pledging to build a new life, I knew I was ready for what lay ahead, no matter who was absent or turned away. By noon, the house I grew up in buzzed with guests. The sound of high heels tapping across the porch, laughter spilling through the windows, and the soft clink of glasses as trays of champagne passed by. Yet, in the midst of all that excitement, I felt an unexpected loneliness. Standing in my childhood room, wrapped in satin and lace, I stared at my reflection. The wedding dress gleamed in the morning light, but the girl inside seemed uncertain, maybe even a little lost. Grace, my ever-present friend, flitted around the room, adjusting my hair, fixing my necklace, and fluffing my veil. Her jokes like, "If you trip on that train, just call it a new dance move," or, "Who needs parents when you're marrying into a millionaire family?" helped lift my spirits for a moment. But still, a hollow ache remained deep in my chest. The house, so full of people, wasn't filled with my people. But I had to push the sadness aside. I took a deep breath, accepting Grace's final hug, and reminded myself to smile. There were guests to greet, a wedding to celebrate. Downstairs, the rooms had been transformed. White and gold ribbons adorned the banisters. Bouquets of white roses and lilies filled the vases. The front window was wide open, letting in the soft breeze from the garden. And I could hear children's laughter as they ran through the grass. I wondered if my parents had ever imagined my wedding looking like this. William's family, of course, was already there, making themselves at home. His mother, Charlotte, swept through the house like royalty, her gown trailing behind her, diamonds glittering in the sunlight with every move. I tried not to stare, but I had never seen jewels that large, not even in a museum. Her voice, smooth as velvet, was filled with practiced warmth as she greeted guests, while Henry, William's father, arrived in a limousine that seemed to stretch on forever. Watching him tip the driver with a bill that looked too large to be real made me feel small and out of place. But their kindness was genuine. Charlotte took my hands and said, "You look radiant. You're already part of our family." Henry, giving me a quick fatherly hug, whispered, "Don't be nervous. Today is for you and William." Their warmth helped ease the tension a little, reminding me of what I had been missing. They were everything my parents hadn't been: present, supportive, eager to make me feel welcome. Yet, their presence only highlighted the absence of my own family, a gap I couldn't ignore. As the afternoon passed, more guests arrived: college friends, distant relatives I barely recognized, William's colleagues from Chicago, and their elegant, well-dressed spouses. The conversations around me shifted from business trips to London to the best places to buy summer homes, debates about old money and Chicago's Gold Coast. I overheard someone mention that William's family owned half a block of Michigan Avenue. I glanced at my simple wedding ring, and suddenly felt self-conscious about everything I owned, about everything I was. I kept myself busy, greeting guests, accepting congratulations, and introducing Grace to anyone who would listen. Grace thrived in these situations, chatting with everyone as if they were old friends. But I couldn't shake the longing for a familiar face. Each time a car pulled up outside, my heart would leap, only to drop again when it was just another distant relative or business associate. Finally, the time came for the ceremony. The living room had been transformed into a fairy tale chapel, with rows of white chairs lined up neatly, sunlight streaming through the windows onto the polished wooden floor. At the front, an archway covered in lilies and ivy marked the spot where I would say my vows. Camera crews had set up in the corner, their lights making everything look more magical, more unreal. William's family believed in grand gestures, and this one included inviting local news to cover the wedding. I had never been on television before, but there was no turning back now. Grace squeezed my hand one last time before I walked down the aisle. "You're ready," she whispered. "And you look like $1 million." I laughed despite myself, feeling a small flicker of excitement. Maybe, just maybe, this day could still be mine. The music began, a gentle piano, and I stepped into the living room. Every eye was on me, and the camera flashes dazzled me. The crowd fell into a soft hush, like a blanket wrapping around the moment. At the front of the room, William waited, his eyes full of warmth and promise. He looked at me the way no one ever had, as if I were the only person in the world. Slowly, the ache in my chest started to loosen. As I walked toward him, I allowed myself to momentarily forget the letter, the thoughts of Paris, and the absence of my family. I focused on the warmth of William's smile, the reassuring pressure of his hand when I reached him, and the way his voice quivered with emotion as he whispered, "You're here." The minister's voice seemed distant, and the crowd faded into the background. When it was time to say "I do," my voice was calm, my heart certain. The cameras captured it all, the guests holding their breath, and somewhere far away, perhaps in a Paris cafe, I hoped my parents were watching. Maybe, just maybe, they'd see their daughter, the one they had left behind, stronger, braver, and happier than they had ever imagined. The applause at the end of the ceremony felt like thunder. William kissed me, and for a brief moment, the loneliness disappeared. I was surrounded by people who cared for me, even if they weren't the ones I had always dreamed of. The news crew documented every moment. The first dance, the laughter, the way Charlotte and Henry embraced me as though I were their own daughter. The world watched as I began a new chapter, even as I quietly closed the door on the old one. Later that night, after the music had faded, the guests had departed, and the champagne had lost its sparkle, I found myself alone in the garden beneath a sky full of stars. I allowed myself to feel it all. The pain, the joy, the strange sense of liberation. I didn't know what the future held, but as I gazed at the moon rising over my new family, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. After the final dance, the last round of applause, and the final toasts had been made, I quietly stepped away from the bustle of celebration. William was still outside, chatting with his parents, laughing about something that had happened during the toasts. Grace was helping the last guests with their coats, her voice as warm and cheerful as always. For the first time all day, I was alone, the wedding frenzy fading into a soft hum in the background. I slipped upstairs into the quiet of my old bedroom. The room was unchanged, same soft pink wallpaper, same bookshelf packed with old paperbacks, same little lamp casting a golden glow onto the bedspread. It felt surreal to be back in this childhood space after all the vows and promises made earlier. My dress was a bit wrinkled, and my feet ached, but for a moment, I simply sat on the bed and listened to my breath. It was then that I remembered my phone, which I had left forgotten in all the chaos. When I picked it up, it buzzed so violently in my hand that I nearly dropped it. I stared at the screen in disbelief. 420 missed calls. The number didn't even seem real, just a jumble of digits too large to comprehend. But there it was, a steady stream of missed calls, one after another, all from my parents and Adam. Along with the calls came text messages, frantic voicemails, and a handful of urgent emails, their subjects screaming in all caps. "Where are you? Call us now. Are you okay? Answer your phone." For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the screen. It was as if the past was reaching out, trying to drag me back into its grasp through the glowing display. I scrolled through the messages, watching them pile up like an overwhelming digital avalanche. There was something almost absurd about it. A family that couldn't bother to attend my wedding, but now they couldn't stop flooding my phone with messages. Curiosity got the best of me, and I opened the first voicemail, bracing myself for whatever I might hear. My mother's voice came through, brittle and sharp. "You need to call us back right now. We saw the wedding on TV. How could you not tell us it would be like this?" Another message followed, this one from my father, his tone more abrasive. "This isn't funny, you know. Why are you ignoring us? Are you really going to throw away your family like this?" One voicemail after another came through, some angry, others frantic, and a few trailed off into silence. Then came Adam's voice, softer than I remembered. "Hey sis, I just saw you on TV. You looked amazing." I had expected it to be just another ordinary wedding, but you looked like you stepped out of a movie. For a brief moment, I wanted to laugh. Trust Adam to see beyond the chaos and recognize the moments that truly mattered. It felt surreal to imagine my parents and brother sitting in a hotel room in Paris, flipping through channels, only to land on my wedding. I could picture my mother's wide eyes when she saw my dress, my father leaning forward in disbelief, and Adam grinning with pride. They had never taken me seriously when I mentioned how important William's family was. They assumed I was exaggerating or just trying to impress them. Now, watching it all unfold on television, the Turner name, the glamorous guests, the live broadcast from the Gold Coast of Chicago, they could no longer ignore how much they had missed. But as the messages piled up, my feelings didn't soften. Instead, a clarity settled within me. For so long, I tried to earn their approval, adjusting my words, my appearance, even my dreams, just to fit their expectations. But in the end, it hadn't made a difference. When it was finally my moment to be celebrated, they chose Paris over me. Now they were trying to worm their way back into my life, but I didn't owe them any explanations. I put my phone down, letting Adam's voice play through the last message. Just call me, okay? I miss you. I closed my eyes and felt his words wash over me. For a second, I thought about calling him back, hearing his voice, telling him I missed him too. But something held me back. It wasn't anger, not anymore. It was more like a sense of freedom, an awareness that for the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval to be happy. I didn't need to explain myself or beg for their forgiveness. My life was mine now, not theirs to judge or control. The truth was, my wedding had revealed what true family meant. William's parents had embraced me with open arms, offering kindness that was real and unconditional. Grace had been by my side through every challenge, always lifting me up when I was falling apart. Even the guests, many of whom I barely knew, celebrated me in ways my own family never had. I remembered walking down the aisle, the flashes of cameras, the music surrounding me. I hadn't felt alone. I felt seen, cherished, and most importantly loved. Maybe that was all I needed. For the rest of the night, I kept my phone turned face down on the dresser. It buzzed repeatedly, another call, another message, another voice from the past. But I ignored them all. I let myself drift outside, where William found me standing under the stars, barefoot on the grass. He wrapped his arms around me and rested his chin on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft. I nodded, and the answer was simple and true. "I am," I said. "I am." As we drove away from the house, my house, now ours, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead seemed open, with the city lights twinkling in the distance. I didn't know what the future held, or if my family would ever understand my choices. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going back. I had found my place, my voice, my life. And for the first time, that was enough. 3 years can pass in an instant, or they can stretch out forever, depending on where you are. For me, the past 3 years since my wedding have been both a whirlwind and a gentle ride. Sometimes overwhelming, sometimes blissfully sweet. Looking back on that day, I hardly recognized the woman I was. The one sitting in her childhood bedroom, clutching a cold letter, wondering if she'd ever feel whole again. Today, my world is different. William and I live in a beautiful home perched along the edge of Lake Michigan, just north of Chicago. It's everything I dreamed of but never thought I deserved. The walls are painted in warm, welcoming hues, and wide windows open to the endless blue of the lake, so that each morning feels like a small piece of magic. The kitchen is spacious enough for dancing, filled with the sounds of laughter, the scent of freshly baked bread, and the rich aroma of coffee. Sometimes, when the sunlight pours in just right, I almost forget how far I've come. In the soft light of the early evening, I sometimes catch a glimpse of myself in the window, and can't help but smile at how much I've changed. William and I have truly built a life here. He's more immersed than ever in the family real estate business, but no matter how busy he gets, he always comes home and holds me in a hug that makes everything else fade away. He's still the gentle, steady man I married, but now he's also my best friend and partner in every sense of the word. We spend our Sundays in the calm of the porch, reading, or taking long winter walks by the lake, the cold biting at our cheeks and the world shrinking to just the two of us and the wind. Sometimes, I wonder if my parents ever think of me, if they regret what happened, or if they feel the silence between us as I do. It's been 3 years since we last spoke. There were no calls, no letters, no birthday cards from Adam. At first, the emptiness felt unbearable, like a constant weight. But in time I learned to let go. I realized I couldn't carry the burden of their choices forever, and I couldn't fill the void they left behind with old hopes or unrealistic dreams. Instead, I created something new. A few months after our wedding, William's parents gave us a gift of $50,000 to help us pursue our dreams. Charlotte's eyes were full of pride when she handed it to me. I never imagined having that kind of freedom. For the first time in my life, I felt like the world was full of endless possibilities, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. It was time to do something just for me. That's how the idea for the bakery was born. The first person I told was Grace. We sat together at the kitchen table, mugs of tea steaming between us, and I sketched out a plan on the back of an old envelope. Grace's eyes lit up, and she grinned, saying, "Let's do it. Let's create something beautiful." With that money, we rented a cozy storefront in Evanston, a bright space with high ceilings, brick walls, and big windows that looked out onto the street. We painted it sunflower yellow and named it Lakeview Bakery. The first few months were a blur of flour, sugar, and nerves. Grace and I worked side by side, waking up before dawn to knead dough and pipe frosting, learning the ins and outs of running a business the hard way. There were plenty of mistakes, burnt batches, missed orders, sleepless nights. But we kept going, driven by the excitement of building something of our own. Soon, our neighbors started stopping by to try our pastries, and word spread. Families, students, even tourists from Chicago came in to try our sweets. There's a quiet pride that comes from creating something with your own hands. Every loaf of bread, each tray of cookies, every bouquet of cupcakes felt like a small triumph. Grace and I experimented with new recipes, tried bold ideas, and celebrated every victory. Our first 5-star review. Our first busy Saturday morning. The day we broke even. Some afternoons, we'd collapse in the back room, flour in our hair, aching feet, laughing until we couldn't breathe. The bakery became more than just a business. It became a community. It's where people gather, where strangers become friends, and where laughter spills out into the streets. We had families who came in every Saturday morning for cinnamon rolls, old men who sat by the window reading newspapers, and little kids who pressed their faces to the glass to watch us frost cakes. I knew every name, every favorite order, and every story. In a way, I found a new kind of family here, one built on kindness, shared moments, and not on blood or obligation. Grace is more than a business partner to me. She's the sister I never had. She knows how to make me laugh when I'm exhausted, how to calm me down when I'm anxious, and how to celebrate even the smallest victories. We still joke about that letter from my mother, the one telling me I would fail without them. Grace always says, "If only they could see you now." I just smile and shake my head. If they could see me now, maybe they'd understand. Or maybe they wouldn't. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore. There are still moments when the past catches up with me. Birthdays, holidays, a song on the radio that takes me back home. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, I find myself wondering what my parents are doing, or if Adam ever tells people he has a sister in America. But these moments are rare now, and they don't hurt the way they used to. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges. And in the spaces they left behind, I've filled my life with love, purpose, and new beginnings. I share this story not out of bitterness, but because I want you to know that healing is possible. Even the deepest wounds can mend with time, patience, and a little faith. You don't need everyone's approval to lead a fulfilling life. Sometimes, the family you choose turns out to be more supportive than the one you were born into. So if you ever find yourself holding a letter that feels like an end, remember, it might just be the beginning of something beautiful. Sometimes, your best chapter is the one you never expected, and happiness finds you in the places you build for yourself. Day by day, loaf by loaf, laugh by laugh, with the people who choose to stand by your side. And if you ever stop by Lakeview Bakery, you'll find me behind the counter, covered in flour and smiling. I'll hand you a warm loaf of bread and wish you well, because in the end, every story deserves a sweet ending.